Sidney Powell joins us now because it was a big hearing from today, and she's going to update us on all that happened. And, Sidney, it's great to have you back. How are you?
Thanks, Sean. My pleasure.
Please, bring us up to speed, and then we'll work our way back. What happened today?
Well, we had a status conference today in front of Judge Sullivan, and it became more of a hearing than a status conference. He has tentatively scheduled sentencing for December, but in the meantime, he is going to address the very serious Brady issues that we've raised, the failure of the government to produce exculpatory evidence to Mr. Flynn that they have had long before he entered his first plea of guilty. Some of it is absolutely stunning, not the least of which includes that special counsel themselves knew that about Comey's ambush interview of General Flynn and his whole plan to do that as early as November 15 of 1917, long before he pled guilty. 2017. And he also knew that, and this is even more remarkable, January 30th, there's an internal memo in the Department of Justice that discloses that they had exonerated Flynn of any sort of Russia violation as of January 30th, 2017.
Let me read from your filing, because I think this is very important. People understand this was your filing in support of the motion to compel production of Brady material, and in order to show cause, you said that the government has not complied with their Brady obligations and their belated letters and productions. You point out that a prosecution team has admitted they are in possession of evidence favorable to the defense. They have steadfastly refused production of the actual evidence, and that would include FBI 302, specifically requested information identified in the Mueller report and information specifically exonerating General Flynn. And the most stunning suppression of evidence is perhaps the text messages of Strzok and Page. And in July of 2017, the Inspector General of the Department of Justice advised the special counsel of the extreme bias and the now infamous text messages of these two FBI employees. And you pointed out they didn't produce a single text message to the defense until March 13, 2018. Now, what happened today is I understand that Judge Emmett Sullivan set a December 18 sentencing deadline for Flynn, and you made clear that you considered the case far from resolved, but you did say you were not seeking to have his guilty plea thrown out. That surprised me, but I know how smart you are. I'm sure you have a better reason than I could come up with.
Well, I said we're not necessarily planning to withdraw the plea. What I intend to seek and will likely seek, depending on what additional evidence shows and the more pieces I put together every day, is that the entire prosecution will be dismissed for egregious government misconduct and the outrageous suppression of Brady material from day one.
Well, and this judge in this case, now I know he was a little harsh at one point to your client, which surprised me, and I think he came back after a recess and said, I think I might have misspoke on something, but it kind of scared me as somebody that thinks that, listening to McCabe and knowing what Comey did, that I feel he was denied his simple, basic, fundamental constitutional rights when they basically said you don't need a lawyer, and he did need a lawyer, and the way they set him up. And then even after that, the FBI agents that interviewed him, did they not conclude that he was not lying? Did they conclude that they concluded they thought he was being truthful, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And on top of that, we now know that McCabe, at least as early as February 8th, if not prior to that, had also cleared him of any potential Logan Act violation.
Logan Act. How many people have been prosecuted under the Logan Act, Sidney Powell?
Right. Yeah, I think it's none. There might have been one way back when, but they wound up getting acquitted, if I remember correctly.
Does that take us back to what, the 1700s or something?
Yeah, something like that. It's absolutely preposterous. It was a pretextual basis for them to go over there in the first place, if that's even what they claimed they were investigating then, because the FBI doesn't have a right to go interview the incoming national security advisor to the president over foreign policy choices. And they knew from having listened to the tape of his conversations with Kislyak that he had done absolutely nothing wrong. So the whole thing was a pretext from the beginning.
John Solomon, our friend from the Hill, wrote an article about the exculpatory evidence withheld in the Flynn case and what the American people should know. And you have been very, very strong and very clear in saying that the entire prosecution, that would be Mueller's team, that would be Weissman, who you wrote at length about in License to Lie, should be dismissed because of their egregious misconduct, and that there's far more at stake here than the sentencing of General Flynn. And you were very bold in accusing the government of being too busy working on what they wanted to accomplish in convicting Mr. Flynn to seek truth or justice. Why do I suspect, if the FBI didn't think he was lying even after they sandbagged General Flynn, why do I suspect, and based on some of your public comments and some of your written comments that I've seen, that in fact that the pressure that you discuss in the filing put on General Flynn was, okay, the guy was going bankrupt, he had no more money for lawyers, and he had to sell his house, and they probably said, well, your son's in business with you. If you don't agree that you lied, we're going after your kid. Why do I suspect that probably happened?
Well, there was extraordinary pressure put on General Flynn to enter his plea of guilty under a very onerous time constraint while they were hiding the evidence that showed the entire thing was a pretext and that he'd been exonerated of a Logan Act violation, that he'd been exonerated of being an agent of Russia. And that, come to find out just from a Brady production a couple of weeks ago, he had also briefed the Defense Intelligence Agency before he ever met with the Turkish officials that was supposedly part of the basis for the big FARA violation. And we found even more evidence with respect to how manipulated all of that was. Not to mention they had to have sat on the press to suppress the page-stroke text message issue because it burst into the press the day after they cajoled Mr. Flynn into pleading guilty.
Let me ask you, and I think this is very important, where is this case going from your perspective? What are we going to learn about General Flynn? And, you know, I know publicly before you got involved in the case, you thought withdrawing a plea may be a good idea. You're leaving the door open for that.
Yes, I haven't completely closed the door on it, but I think it's going to be, if everything I keep finding continues to prove to be true, we're looking at egregious Brady violations and a dismissal of the entire prosecution.
Can you just chronicle, because I've been following this pretty closely, Sidney, and I'm very aware of your history and the great things that you have done in terms of prosecutorial misconduct and exposing such, probably great peril to yourself. I don't think there's any better lawyer that General Flynn can have. Can you just tell people what you think went on here?
I think it was completely a pretext for the agents to go over to interview him that day at all. I think he was the subject of an illegal unmasking, an illegal leak of his conversation with Ambassador Kislyak. At the same time, the people that were listening to the conversation and reviewing the transcripts knew he had done absolutely nothing wrong because he was incoming national security advisor and he was just doing his job. So it was essentially a setup from the beginning and a relentless pursuit by the Department of Justice Special Counsel's office to find something to pin on him.
Do you believe when those agents went into the office and took advantage of the chaos as directed by Mr. Super Patriot James Comey, do you believe that they had illegally unmasked General Flynn? Do you believe that there's a possibility they had access to the entire transcript of what they wanted to know, and that would be a conversation that he might have had with some Russian ambassador guy?
Oh, yes. It's very clear now that they had the entire transcript. And General Flynn knew they had the transcript. He knew that call was being recorded. And he had absolutely no reason to lie about it at all. He remembered what he could remember when he was blindsided by them showing up in his office that day, not having thought about any of that for a good while. And the whole thing is just reeks from the get-go.
All right, Sidney Powell, attorney for General Michael Flynn, at the sentencing, at the hearing today. Sentencing date is set for December the 18th. Quick break. We'll come back. All right, Sidney Powell, attorney for General Michael Flynn. Now we know that she has gone out there accusing prosecutors of their egregious conduct, hiding exculpatory evidence. That would be the special counsel's office. The judge in the case, District Judge Emmett Sullivan. Now, he's the guy that came in, and you actually, if I recall, wrote about him in License to Lie through that fixed the Ted Stevens case. Now, after the guy was destroyed, but he came in after and got it right, didn't he?
Yes, he did. In fact, he dismissed that case for egregious government. Well, actually, he was made clear he was going to dismiss it, and so then Eric Holder swooped in and dismissed it ahead of that because it's really bad to have a district judge dismiss your case for egregious government misconduct and Brady violations. But that's exactly what happened there. And this case is going to make Stevens look minuscule in comparison. I mean, what they've done to General Flynn is Stevens on steroids.
So I'm not wrong in my belief that his constitutional rights, Miranda rights, were violated, that he was illegally unmasked and raw intelligence was leaked. And I'm not wrong that this team, led apparently by Weissman, because Mueller apparently didn't know anything, that they, in fact, did things, withheld exculpatory evidence. Comey, McCabe, all took advantage of General Flynn, and this is how we treat a 33-year vet in this country, Sidney?
Yes, not a single page-stroke text message was produced to the defense prior to General Flynn's plea. At the same time, they hid Comey's knowledge, and having told them that he had completely ambushed General Flynn, dispatched the agents on purpose, taking advantage of the whole situation at the White House. It was all very carefully planned. We now know also that there was a meeting, a very well-orchestrated planning meeting between high-ranking members of the FBI to plan the ambush interview of General Flynn. I mean, it's all going to be coming out.
All right, Sidney Powell, attorney, thank you for General Michael Flynn.